It's Saturday night, 8 o'clock, talk of our times. And I came up with a funny little thing this week that I wanted to let you guys know, that the acronym for talk of our times is TOOT, toot. So I thought that was kind of funny, because everything now is HHS, which is health and human services, and LOL and LMFAO. Everything is an acronym. So talk of our times, toot. Saturday night, 8 o'clock, with your girl, Monique Marvez. So I pulled a bunch of stories, but before we go into the stories, I think that it's important to note that last week, Thursday, marked the 15-year anniversary since YouTube, the first video, was sent. And it was sent from a zoo. It was a zoo. Somebody just wanted to share their day, the guy who invented YouTube. And then he was, and it's still the only video on his channel, incidentally. And then it was sold to Google and etc. But think about where we would be if we did not have YouTube in these times. And 15 years, to me, doesn't seem that long ago. I actually remember being on the air in San Diego on the radio when my boss, who's a total technophile, Tracy Johnson, he came in to say, hey, this thing happened, YouTube, and it's going to be, it was a news story, and he was very excited and projected that it would become very huge, very fast, which I can't remember how we shared videos before YouTube. I remember getting a video, which now I'm thinking, like, where was it housed? Where did we store it? I don't know. I remember the first video that I received in an email, and it wasn't, I couldn't tell you, like, was it a link? Was it I don't know. It was called Trunk Monkey, and it was about a monkey. It was a little video of a monkey in a trunk with a crowbar who was like your security system, Trunk Monkey. These two guys got in a fight over a fender bender, and this orangutan jumped out of the trunk with a crowbar and started threatening the other driver. That was the first video I ever received in 2003 or late 02, when I used to have dial-up, and it would go. And my friend Leslie, in 2000, this is crazy to remember this, at the end of 2002 or early 03, right around in that window, when I had my AOL that you put the disc in that you would get for free at Staples. And then you'd have a modem and it'd go, right? And then you were on, and you had a computer, and you had a tower, you had a monitor, and I was able to watch the video of Trunk Monkey. And here we are, live streaming on a Saturday night at 8 o'clock during the pandemic. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit. I pulled some stories, but I want to talk to you guys about physics and metaphysics. And physics is, the longer something stays still, the longer something stays still. I'm paraphrasing. But one of the things that's fascinating to me is that here we are, 7 weeks ago, we already knew stuff was coming down the pike, but 100 people had died 7 weeks ago. Like, this Tuesday will be 6 weeks since I got home from Australia. Tonight is 1 month since my first show. Like, the time of us being in this situation is passing, and we're getting used to it. And whether we want to admit it or not, there is a new normal descending upon us, a new normal that includes, YouTube and this sort of interaction and, the way we're living. So a couple things. I wore a dress from the 60s. This is a 60s, very classic Hawaiian kind of hostess dress, because in the face of how to move forward, in what way we're going to move forward, it's okay to fall back a little, to step back. On my 3:30 today, which I do live on Facebook every single day at 3:30, on Monique Marvez official fan page. I talked about how during war, you charge, you go forward with force and power, and then you fall back. You get entrenched, and then sometimes you have to come back to regroup, to tighten up. And, to me, I'm not watching the statistics, although I know that New York has sort of leveled off and the numbers of people in hospital beds is dropping and the numbers of people dying. I don't even like saying that because I've actually had some friends / acquaintances lose people. Like, it had always been a news story. And my friend Edgar Rivera, who's a wonderful Puerto Rican comic in New York, lost his mother. That was a real, I never met her. Edgar and I aren't besties, but to lose your mother in the middle of this and not be able to mourn properly or have a proper funeral must be very terrible. And to just have people send you well wishes, via the internet. So, sometimes we have to fall back. And, I'm wearing this dress, and I've watched some new things, but I've fallen back into watching Mad Men. And the reason why I watch Mad Men, is because it reminds me of my childhood, but it also is a wonderful show because it is set against history. And just like there's movies about 9/11, one of them, I'm going to say the name wrong, but just Google movie that Sandra Bullock and Tom Hanks are in. It's called something like Incredibly Close and Horribly Loud. I know Loud and Close are in the title. And it is a fantastic film. And I was cynical. I didn't want to like a movie that had those two. It's like, oh, it's going to be schmaltzy, and you have America's sweetheart and Tom Hanks. Like, what definition do we even have for Tom Hanks? Who is he to us? Like, what do we call Tom Hanks in America? You know what I mean? He's like, how do you go from bosom buddies to whatever Tom Hanks is? Like that guy. But the movie is fantastic. And it's set in post 9/11. And I watch Mad Men, and I can turn it on anywhere in the series. I know every episode. There's 94 episodes comprising about 72 hours of content, which I have watched every episode to the point where when I used to just let it run all day while I was cleaning my house, it was like some people play their favorite record album. I can mouth the words, and I put it away. And I moved into this apartment. I didn't watch Mad Men for 14, 15 months. It hasn't been my go-to. I've been very focused on content creation and not getting sucked into the one-eyed goddess. And that being said, during the pandemic, I have watched a lot of things. I had stopped Game of Thrones at season 3. I don't want to say anything that happened because some of you may watch it for the first time. But I picked it. I started from the beginning, rewatched, and ended. That took about a week and a half. And it was very, very, very good, as you all know. But in going back to Mad Men, and I'm telling you this for a reason, it's the old Rosanna Dana, Saturday Night Live. It's always something. It's always something. I was an infant when JFK was shot. I don't remember that. I vaguely remember when Robert Kennedy was shot, that my mother took pictures of the television screen. We had a little black and white TV in the family room. And my mother took pictures of the lines of the people going in and out of St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. I remember that like it was yesterday. I remember watching back in the day, The Fugitive. I believe it was Richard Jansen played Kimball, and the final episode with the one-armed man. I remember Dark Shadows. I remember all of this against the backdrop of Vietnam and the TV set being on when we were at the dinner table. I remember the 1968 Democratic Convention. I was a small child, and I remember overhearing the adults talk about, the Kent State. I remember the My Lai massacre. I remember these things. And are they the pandemic? No. No, this is unprecedented. This is global. This is an invisible, to some degree, world war. But think about, it's not trench warfare. It's discomfort. It's inconvenience. That's all. For most of us, for the vast majority of us, it's a change in our lifestyle. It's to me, and I'm going to tie it all together, it's falling back to deferred gratification. I do a whole bit on deferred gratification in my act. And what deferred gratification means is the inability to get exactly what you want exactly when you want it. It harkens back to my childhood when I wanted a song that I heard on the radio, and I had to either go to the record store on my bicycle and buy it, or I had to wait for it to play, run in my room, get my Radio Shack recorder, lean it up against the speaker, and wait with my 2 fingers to hit play record. Maybe getting a reset on deferred gratification isn't such a horrible thing. Maybe we had reached a point when you talk about things going viral and contagiousness and the speed at which technology was moving. I don't understand exactly the laws of physics to be able to explain this to you as my mind perceives it, but there's something about the need for speed that once that energy enters into the matrix, everything goes faster. Everything is connected. And I believe that. So in this need for speed, we now have drones dropping products and robots. And those are very wonderful things. There's no deferred gratification. If you're a member of Amazon Prime and you click, you can get something delivered that day. It's Uber Eats. It's a drone on the front porch. But with that need for speed, we put that into the matrix, and now we have a fast-moving disease that's keeping up with our drones that are dropping whatever it is, our Peloton bikes. Everything's going faster. So maybe it's really okay on some level to have everything drop back. We slow the disease and we revisit the value of deferred gratification, of not getting what you want exactly when you want it. And it makes me think a little bit of that Garth Brooks song, Thank God for Unanswered Prayers. Maybe we don't actually need every single thing. Maybe we're dodging bullets we don't even know are being shot at us. Maybe some young girl is sitting in an apartment with an elderly aunt or a grandmother or a mother, a single mother, because that's where she ended up. Maybe there are young men and women that are not on Tinder and Grindr, that have compulsiveness towards promiscuity because something that has gone wrong, and they have a moment in time where something was hit in the pause button. Now, am I against people connecting? Am I against intimacy? Am I against sex? Absolutely not. I am for all of those things. But I'm not against things that are soul-sucking and self-esteem lowering, and a lot of not having to think things through to the end, to just be engaged in the beginnings, in the arrivals, in the very quick arrivals of things, doesn't give us pause to think maybe it's not the best thing in the world for you. And right now, even in my own life, I could lie to you, but what's the point? We've decided as a group of friends to speak in a very candid fashion during this time. And I'm here to tell you that I like to shop, and I'm not an online shopper. My joy is sort of my bar, because everybody has an addiction, a compulsion, my thing is to just mill about in nice thrift stores and vintage shops and Goodwills. That's my bar. That's how I while away the hours. That's my day drinking. That's what I enjoy. Guess what? I can't do it. I'm reorganizing my home. And guess what? I don't miss it. It just fell away. It fell away. And interestingly enough, the compulsion, the drive, and not in a stressful way, but in an ambitious way, the drive to create and to learn and to move forward and to master things that I just somehow always put off when I met somebody for a Starbucks and then sort of meandered in to the Crossroads or the Buffalo Exchange or the Culver City thrift store. Since I can't do those things because they're all connected, it's like the old joke. I only drink, I only snort cocaine when I'm drunk, and I only smoke when I'm at the bar. You know what I mean? It's like that, those jokes, Well, I'm not going to Starbucks. I'm not meeting friends for lunch. I'm not wandering in to the closest thrift store to wherever I just ate lunch with somebody, because I always case the joint. I always know what's in the neighborhood as I'm driving up and say to myself, after lunch, I'm going to check that little spot out. And it's fun. It's like being an adventurer. But at this point, I have all of the desire to learn YouTube and social media and make appointments and declare and decide things and keep myself on the straight and narrow of 3:30 Facebook Live. We've got a group. We've got a very good group every day. I have a solid group of people that show up and I just see their names pop up on the screen. It's different than you guys because I've got the camera turned and I'm not seeing you. But I'm guessing, there's a pretty good amount of you. And I'm very, very grateful for you. I truly am. And I'm going to try and do the chat better afterwards and not have it be like a disaster. But I'm not making any promises because I haven't mastered that. But even the fact that I've gotten this far, that I've kept my appointments, that I've kept my promises, that I have kept my relationship with you guys pure and authentic and dedicated. I am dedicated to creating, to looking up stories. So, rather than just ramble on, I'm excited that we talked about, deferred gratification and a few of the other things that I wanted to talk about falling back. But here are my stories. First of all, there was an unfortunate incident. Now, here's the thing. I'm pescatarian. Predominantly during this situation, I've fallen into vegetarianism. I've always been kind of a quasi-vegetarian, but I bought shrimp like the first week, and the rest of the time I've been just vegetarian. But the Smithfield, there was a Smithfield ham situation that one of the largest COVID-19 clusters was in the Smithfield foods. Well, guess what? Then there was a second one this week. And as this story continued to unfold, one of the unfortunate, Tyson was the other big meat plant that shuttered. And according to Bloomberg, we are on the brink of having a supply chain interruption in the supply chain of meat, of chicken and pork products. Now, I don't eat either one of those. But it made me, one of the things that Smithfield did was that they blamed, which I found very interesting. They talked about how, and here's the story. I'll just, glance at it briefly because it's when I'm on the radio, I always have like bunches of paper around me. But coronavirus at meatpacking plants worse than first thought. And, interestingly enough, one of the things that they said at the Smithfield pork plant in South Dakota. Now, I was pretty surprised when I was a road comic and I would go to South Dakota or I would go to Kansas or I would go to North Dakota. I actually performed in Grand Forks, North Dakota. How many Latino people, it's like they over-tunneled or something, because I didn't realize that people want work. To me, because of what I do, I think in terms of, you go where the work is because you can't just do comedy in one place. It's a finite audience. You have to be on the road. But I never think in terms of migrant workers who follow crops, or people who they have to go where there's large groups of manual labor needed. You know, in small towns across America, there are large groups of immigrants that go specifically to work at meatpacking plants or, you know, vegetables, Hormel, in Minneapolis, in North Dakota, South Dakota. I met a lot of my Latino brethren would come up to me after comedy shows, and, you know, and I'd ask them, like, what the hell are you doing here? And they'd be like, oh, I work at, you know, fill in the blank. So one of the things that I found, you know, a little bit sad was that Smithfield, they have, you know, 2,200 workers and 48 plants, was saying that they felt that the spread of the disease had an enormous amount to do with the culture and, you know, nationality culture of the workers. Well, it's, you know, it's a cycle. And the cycle is, if you don't have a lot of money, you have to share your living space with a lot of people. It's no different than retail. If you walk in a big fancy store, you know, you walk into Neiman's, Hermes, wherever, the things are not crowded in the aisles. You know, there's big space and there's 3 or 4 things on the rack. And you know, boy, if you're paying the rent in this neighborhood with 3 or 4 things on the rack, what must those 3 or 4 things cost? Well, it's the same with human beings. You know, if you've got one person, like my friend Russ, he lives in Miami, he lives in a giant house that sits on several acres, and he's one dude. Guess what? He's rich. On the other hand, how many college students, you know, that move out to LA to be part of the Upright Citizens Brigade or whatever, you know, I've known comedians who have 4 or 5 roommates in a 3-bedroom house. Like, one person permanently lives in a converted living room. So yeah, if that house gets COVID, chances are the other 4 guys are going to get COVID. If a factory worker that works at Smithfield, who is a minority, who shares a home with a lot of people, and, you know, 2 or 3 other people work at the plant, and maybe they got it at the plant, or maybe they got it at home. My point is that in tight groups, which is what has to happen when you don't have a lot of money, the disease is obviously more contagious and going to spread faster. No different than the Italian family in New Jersey. But the reason why I brought this story up and belabored the point is because I don't think the blame game is the way to go with this. I think it's more about trying to be extremely objective, not subjective, objective in the gathering of information about the cases. You know, the inability to be 6 feet apart is a fact. Whether the person is college educated is not important, because you know what? It's not important to the disease. And the reason why I'm saying this is because this situation is shining a spotlight. If everything were hunky-dory peachy keen and everybody had everything they needed and there was somewhat of a level playing field, not level, I'm not a socialist or a communist, but I'm just saying the bottom tier of our society was in a different position than, you know, the disparity we have and the amount of homelessness and the issues we have with healthcare. If the bottom was at a different bottom, if the depth were not quite as deep, you know, this wouldn't be as scary as it is for some people. But when you already think that you're as low as you can go as a society, and you see the bottom continue to drop, that gets scary. Because even on the most unconscious level, we know that as a country, whether it's, you know, Jamie Dimon, who's the president of a bank, or you know, the Disney heiress who came out this week and actually lambasted some of the executives, saying, hey, you guys made a ton of money and we have just furloughed thousands, I think over 100,000, 200,000 people were furloughed from the Disney parks. That's one of my stories, and I'll get the detail. But the point is, that the disease is not picking anybody based on, you know, your sexuality, your socioeconomic standing, your culture. No, this is a disease of speed. The easier it can jump from person to person. There's a lot of affluent people in New York that are ill because New York is as tight as a meatpacking plant. It's just true. It's a very, very dense city, just like certain working conditions are very, very dense. And I think that the more objective we can be, and the more we can really look at the disease as this very, I don't want to say unforgiving, but it seems like it attacks, and I'm just going to say it, certain communities harder, is because those communities have already had generations of, you know, eating habits based on availability of money for food, and, you know, distraction because you're already having a hard life, so you're going to open a cerveza or a Schlitz malt liquor. Or, you know, I mean, look, I can say these things. I'm Latina. I come from a family of obese people. Half my family's already dead of heart disease and high blood pressure. And if they weren't, this would get them. And that's why I guess maybe I have it in my heart to say, let's continue to be objective. And if this situation is shining a light on certain social structures that can be revisited and bolstered up in a way that isn't incredibly un-American. And I say that because, yes, I don't want this to be like a blanket excuse for years to come of, you know, the Rona ruined my life. No, your life was ruined before the Rona got here. You already had problems. You were already lazy. You were already a pothead. You were already obese. You were already, you know, on the other hand, you got to call things what they are, you know? Am I sitting pretty? No. You know what the spotlight showed on me? The Rona showed me that I need to have a bigger savings account. The Rona showed me that I need to be very serious about chipping away at my credit card debt. You know, that's what the Rona is showing me. That's what deferred gratification is coming into Monique's world of, no, I'm not going to charge things in the future. It's not going to be about monthly payments. It's not going to be, oh, what the heck, mañana. Because mañana could be the day that it is today. Mañana could be today. So, you know, I hope that I give you guys things to think about that are not, you know, sorrowful. Because I don't think this is a terrible thing. Sometimes I think, you know, like they say in AA, you have to take an unflinching moral inventory. You have to know exactly where you really, really are before you can figure out where you're really, really going. And I have a girlfriend, Sherry from Miami. She is my girlfriend, but she started out as my hairdresser when I was 21. She had like the cool salon in Miami. And again, it was one of those things that, you know, I saved up and I worked in the cosmetic department and I wanted to go to the cool hair salon. And she gave me a break because I worked in cosmetics and she was hoping I would send her clients. And she was wonderful. And many years ago, we went to New York because I was going to do comic relief. And she said, I'll do your hair for free and pay my own way and help you with your makeup if I can go and be in the same room with Whoopi Goldberg and Robin Williams, rest in peace. And you know, Billy Crystal, we really didn't care about him. And to be honest with you, a little behind the scenes, it was interesting because I was at the rehearsal. I was, you know, Bruce Valanche was there, and I was at Radio City Music Hall in 1998. It's bringing back very good memories. And they were on stage doing their thing, getting ready for comic relief. And I remember Robin Williams just had such a great energy. And he walked over to Billy, because this was after Good Will Hunting. And he said, hey, since last time I saw you, I won an Oscar. And he said it with like, that, you know, it was playful, it was tongue in cheek, it was a little barb, a little city slickers poke. And there was a real charm to it. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because when Sherry and I were in our hotel room, I dumped my purse out and I counted. I mean, back in the day, I counted all my loose dollars from cabs, and I used to pay cash when I was a road comic. I paid cash for everything. I didn't use my credit cards except for emergency. And I took all my money out and I stretched it and flattened it and I put it in denominations and I folded it and put it back in my wallet and I counted. I put my change in stacks and I counted it, and I knew exactly how much money I had. I knew how much I had in the bank. And this was before you could do everything online. This was in the late 90s when I used to call. I would call my bank, and you would have to push in your account number, 383. I remember my bank account number, and then it would give you your status. And I knew to the penny what was in my bank account and what was in my wallet, and what, if anything, if I had put a tire or some emergency thing on my credit card. I've had an American Express since 1993. And she was impressed by that. Well, I don't know how or why, but I fell out of that habit. I absolutely just, time passes. You start making more money. You buy things. You have contracts. You use more credit. Guess what? During this pandemic, I have started checking all of my balance, my interest rates. You know, I've everything going forward. I've made a plan. I have a stack of change in the living room because I found change in all of these purses that I just pack and don't even empty completely and throw into my luggage. And just to fall back, to remember what it was like to know that I had $6.37 in quarters, and it made my purse heavy. So it was fun to be able to use change to pay things. I think of these things because it's the simple pleasures. It's the going back. It's the remembering that it's always something. It's the remembering that the backdrop of pandemic is probably not terribly different than, for my parents, the backdrop of the Cuban Missile Crisis or the Vietnam War. This is enormous. It is enormous, but it's not as bad as it would seem. Now, I say that because every time there's a conversation now, and I'm not going to get into anything political. I don't want to get into, this is one of my other little headlines. Female rowers in Venice are delivering groceries to the elderly by gondola. It's a beautiful story. I don't need to tell you the details. There's just women rowers. And Will Valderrama inspired to turn the spotlight on frontline workers. He's doing videos, just funny, uplifting videos about remembering to be kind to grocery store people and, frontline. Like, that's what we're referring to now. Like the bag boy at Gelson's is in more danger in some weird way than, think about it. And one of my headlines was a woman said, I did not sign up for the military. I signed up for Walmart. One of the stories that I read, because how many jokes have we all told about A, the fact that obese people work at Walmart? Hello, they're at risk. And B, the fact that elderly people are Walmart greeters. And in this story, an older gal said that she asked one of her bosses, hey, what precautions are we taking? A few weeks ago, Evelyn Hall asked her manager at Walmart why the store wasn't giving workers gloves and masks. The manager's response, according to Hall, wash your hands every 15 minutes so you don't need a glove or masks. She walked away from me and started laughing like it was funny. Well, they went on and, again, these frontline workers, just so you know, workers have died at Trader Joe's, Safeway, and Kroger's. As of April 20th, okay, that's not that long ago. April 20th was last Sunday. Last Sunday. It's been this long. Walmart finally said, oh, we're going to limit the number of people in the store and we're going to supply our workers with what they need to be safe. Really, Walmart? You are the richest family in the United States. I looked it up before I did this story. Number one, richest family. And you guys didn't do anything a month ago, 5 weeks ago. It had to come to Sunday, last Sunday. Shame. I'm just saying it's shame. Shame on Walmart. But it's probably one month of interest on one of the heiress's accounts would probably pay for gloves for a limited number of employees across the country. Again, I'm not sitting here crunching numbers, but to think that entities like Amazon and Walmart that are making money when no one else is, because that is the real crux, is that every conversation about how to move forward is a conversation about reopening the economy. They're not saying getting back to normal, or it's about business. It's about reopening restaurants and health spas and businesses. Nobody's really that upset about, the beaches and the parks. They opened the beaches in Ventura County. Right now, you can go to the beach in Ventura County as long as you're 6 feet away from somebody else. Somebody sent me a meme today of Jaws saying, it was a bad idea to open the beach then. Amityville. I put these things out there because I want, for myself, I want to think of the positives. I want to think objectively. I want to think in new ways. I want new pathways of this inconvenience. Now that I've already been inconvenienced, it's okay. Maybe I don't need Amazon Prime. I'm not saying that I don't. I'm not saying that I do. I'm not bagging on Amazon. I said what I had to say, but they employ lots and lots and lots of people. They've made the world a much easier place to live. They have their value. And to think that 20 plus years ago, they just sold books. But like everything else, think about, all the things you've read online over the last 25 years of what happens to a small town when the Walmart comes in, to the mom and pop shops. Think about, what Amazon has done to, there's what's left, Barnes and Noble, and they've had to completely rejig the way they do business. There used to be several large chains. There was, I can't remember now, but you remember. There were several chains of bookstores that I enjoyed. I love bookstores. And maybe over the last 25 years, as we came into this new millennium, that need for speed, that need for convenience, that need for the big box stores, that sort of led us to, bigger, better, faster, bigger, better, faster, more meat produced faster, bigger plants, workers closer together. I like that there was already a movement in place, of bigger is not always better, that people were getting back to artisanal, people were getting back to farmers markets, people were using reusable bags. It makes me a little bit sad that we're not using reusable bags now. You can in some stores. Gelson's doesn't allow it, but I get that. But some stores, everybody's still trying to figure out who bags what, who touches what. It's awkward. Everybody has the plastic salad bar sneeze guards, but store by store, sometimes you can reuse, sometimes you can't. But hey, for the paper bags and some of the plastic bags, the fact that people aren't driving and flying and doing a lot of what they're doing, this is a big ecological stop down. I know some of you are wondering, how is it that she can talk that much for that long? It's because I'm excited, because I wait for you guys. So, let me just read you the headline of a couple of other stories, because I pulled them for a reason. But I knew by the way, it seems bizarre that the potential death of the North Korean leader, although it's big news, it doesn't seem like that big a news, because in a pandemic situation, it seems like a lot of political hostilities have just gone by the wayside. That it just, at least that's the way it feels and seems to me when I read the news, that this is just a bigger story. It's kind of swept everything into a different, perspective and place. In fact, my cousin Diana sent me a link today that this is the longest period of time that Miami has gone without a murder since 1957. That's like, and I'm sure that, I haven't investigated. It's not something that I've Googled, but you know me, I will. I'm very curious to know what crimes are being committed as I'm looking, because it seems like things are also getting solved. I was very excited about this headline. New search conducted in 1996 disappearance of California student Kristen Smart. Now, this young lady, a new search warrant was served Wednesday at the Los Angeles home of a man who has long been described as a person of interest in the 1996 disappearance of college student Kristen Smart. The warrant served at the home of Paul Flores was seeking specific items of evidence. Now, the fact that during this time, detectives, just so you know, one of the things that I have binge watched in the last 6 weeks is Forensic Files. Not a great idea. If you binge watch Forensic Files, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to be very concerned with the whereabouts of your loner handyman. It's always the loner handyman that either finds the body or kills the person, or the rogue policeman who uses his power to, kill hookers or whatever. But it is fascinating how, like, one strand of hair will, and they've exonerated people that were convicted of a terrible crime all these years later as DNA has gotten better. But, when I saw this story, and there's another one in People magazine from a 1981 crime, but this one being California had a lot of detail. Like, this guy's in trouble. It looks like if they went to his house and he was seen and et cetera, I'm going to follow this story and see what happens to Mr. Flores. But how interesting that maybe just as cars aren't driving and certain crimes aren't being committed, and there hasn't been a murder in Miami in 6 weeks, which is the longest period of time since 1957, and maybe the fact that I could drop back and find dresses that I haven't worn, maybe policemen, detectives, forensics are able to say, you know what, nothing new's coming in. We're usually overworked. We're maxed out. And now we have the time. We have the time to check DNA and to cross, all of these things. And how wonderful would that be if there was a reset in even the judicial system, where there was an actual time that if somebody had been convicted based on faulty DNA, that they can say, you know what, here's a byproduct of the pandemic, Mr. So-and-so. We finally have new markers. That is not your DNA, and you're free to go, and we're sorry, and you're probably going to sue us, and we're probably going to pay you out, but at least you're free. There's a lot of things that can happen as we're resetting ourselves, as we surged forward this 2 decades into this millennium, and now we're falling back because of this pandemic. It seems like everything going on in the Middle East just isn't news. There isn't. I don't even want to say it, but I remember a few years ago when I was at the KFI. We do that Christmas telethon. Well, I call it Christmas, but it's the holiday time where we we raised the Pastathon, and we were at the Pastathon a few years ago, and Michelle Q, who produced Bill Handel, said, you know, boy, the Pastathon's going great. You know, lucky nothing's happened. And then, bam, we had the Paris attacks. You know, and that was 1 year after the fact that the Pastathon was interrupted by the shooting in Ferguson, and that started the whole Black Lives Matter. Right now, the pandemic is the biggest story and will be the biggest story. And just like Mad Men is up against the backdrop of everything that happened from 1959 to 1970, Woodstock, the whole thing, what stories are we going to tell after the pandemic, with the pandemic as the backdrop to our own lives, the micro and the macro? Today on my 3:30 show, I talked about the fact that one of the movies that I've watched is Tolkien, which was pronounced Tolkien. He says that in the movie several times, Tolkien. And the interesting thing is that I didn't know anything about him at all. You know, here the trilogy is arguably one of the most important franchises, you know, up there with, at the very least, Star Wars and The Godfather and, you know, Rocky, you know, Lord of the Rings, and they were made much closer together. That being said, he was an orphan. He was a ward of the Catholic Church. His mother, I mean, he was not an orphan as a small child, but, you know, as an adolescent. And because of his incredible intelligence and curiosity, if not being a privileged intellectual, he was most certainly of exquisite intelligence. And he was part of World War I. And when I say part of World War I, he was on the battlefield. He went there, and at some point in the movie, they show that he specifically went over the top, as they say, out of the trench into, you know, all that implies, bayonets and mustard gas, to look for one of his close associates from Oxford. And it showed how the trauma of World War I absolutely influenced and you know, was sort of the backbeat of The Hobbit, which was his first book. A lot of people are familiar with the whole story of Winnie the Pooh and the 100 Acres. Again, A.A. Milne, and that wasn't his real name, started that storytelling as a way to heal. And a lot of people don't know this, but I'm one of these people that Google it. It goes back and forth like New York and Japan. But Winnie the Pooh is the most beloved character in literature. Winnie the Pooh. And Winnie the Pooh is a direct result of the horrors of World War I. And interestingly enough, Christopher Robin, which again, not his real name, forced his father to help him participate in World War II because he felt that was important, even though he was a slight-built person. And just so you know, Christopher Robin never took a dime from the Winnie the Poohs because he was actually at odds that something he thought was private between him and his father became public. So even though it was a vast fortune and as popular, more popular than Mickey Mouse, Christopher Robin did not profit from Pooh. And he tells a story that when he was fighting in World War II, that the soldiers who didn't even know he was Christopher Robin sometimes because he went by his real name would sing in order to find comfort. Winnie the Pooh, you know, and I think about that because I know that just as Ring Around the Rosie, A Pocket Full of Posies, is about the plague, that this stop down, this fallback, this resetting, where we're facing inconvenience and tremendous economic hardship, And I'm not downplaying that at all. And FYI, I am in a gather-based business. I have not set up a Patreon or a GoFundMe or asked or charged for anything that I've put there, because I feel like in some ways building currency right now is more important to me. There's a book called The Science of Getting Rich. I mention it all the time on stage, by Wallace Wattles. It was written in 1910, and Mr. Wattles died in 1911, so it was a real mic drop. And the book talks about why the word currency is a synonym for cash, for money, because, technically everything is currency. And when you read the book, it talks about how when you are in alignment with your purpose, with being in the right place at the right time, with the right intention, with the alignment with the desires of your soul, that energy and the transference of energy of currency will make cash money inevitable. That it's just you're gonna go in the flow, you're gonna go in the stream, you're gonna go in the matrix. And I believe that having these times with you is building my currency, that cash will be inevitable on the other side of this, whatever hardships I may face and however long this can take, because I am in a gather-based business and I have no idea when I'm going to set foot on a stage, on a cruise ship, in a theater. I don't know that. But as you can see, and I want to impart this on you, I'm calm. I'm fine. I'm not nervous. I'm not stressed. I'm not attached. I understand evictions won't even start till May, and I'm fine. That's not the situation in which I will find myself. But should they decide to non-renew me based on asking, for help between now and the end of my lease, if I'm not able to get absolutely to the penny current, and believe me, they have a huge deposit. I don't want to divulge every little secret of my life, but the point is that in going through my finances, yes, I talked to the car company and said, I need you to put 2 payments on the end, and I'm paying a lesser amount of rent that I will make up at this time. And I know exactly a contract I have in place towards the end of this year that should be fine. But who knows? Maybe it won't be. Again, calm, because I'm not attached to this place. I'm attached to this time. I'm attached to making the most of this opportunity. I'm attached to finding new ways to connect with you and build currency. Who knows? I might not wait for something to happen. I might create something myself. I might jump in my car with my dog and do a post-pandemic parking lot comedy revival. We've been on what I call a folk fast, that we're fasting from other people. Who knows? Maybe I'll do my own cross-country folk festival where I just contact people I know in different cities and say, hey, can you put tables and chairs in a parking lot 6 feet apart? All I need is a karaoke mic, a parking lot, and some space, and I'm good to go. I will make a way. I will make the most. I will move forward peacefully because I feel that I'm getting into the alignment of this time. I'm not fighting it. I'm not saying, oh, when are comedy clubs going to reopen? And, and we have a right and we're American and we shouldn't have to wear a mask. I'm not doing that. I'm becoming very spiritually aerodynamic. I'm absolutely, settling in comfortably. And I'm picking up a different kind of speed in this time of no motion. Maybe when the whole world is moving fast, we all seem like we're going slow. And how many times have you said, I don't have the time? How many detectives have been overwhelmed? Maybe the guys that served that warrant to Mr. Flores on Wednesday. As everything around you is going, new technology. You got to update your phone tonight between the hours of 1 and 3 if you're on Wi-Fi. And, and now, by comparison, everything slowed down. Now we look like we're going fast. We can pick up our own rhythm and speed, the rhythm and no rhythm, the speed and no motion. It's exciting. It's exciting to see who we're going to be in the new times. I think we're going to refer to the before times. You know, it's going to be like the before. Like, remember before when blah, blah, blah? These times are exciting to me. Being with you guys is exciting to me in this new way, creating new currency. Yeah, I mean, next Saturday, I'll do more stories. I won't ramble on as much about Winnie the Pooh and blaming minorities for COVID any more than, you know, you notice, I hope you guys noticed, that I didn't bang on the obvious stories, the obvious things that were publicly said, either on purpose or as a sarcastic joke or whatever. Because I don't like, you know, I understand shining a spotlight on society in general, but I really want to avoid, as people get more and more afraid, and the longer this goes, the more nervous people tend to become pettier and meaner in fear. It's just a natural reaction when you get afraid. I have girlfriends who are nurses in emergency rooms that tell me, like, that's when people are at their worst. And we've all seen it on TV where the person just snaps at the hospital. The classic Shirley MacLaine scene in Terms of Endearment. You know, but the point that I want to say in the summation of all of this is that we are not mean people. We are not a mean society. I don't believe that. I understand some healthy political jousting, but now is not the time for bipartisan cruelty and meanness. Everybody's, you know, going to make decisions between now and November. There's nothing that needs to be discussed today because we're all on a big fat stop down anyway. There's not going to be any rallies. Democratic convention's been pushed back. You know, there's not a ton of legislation being passed other than arguing over how much money to release to who, how. And that discussion in itself is a positive discussion. I mean, do people wish there was more money coming? Absolutely. Is it coming fairly and quickly? Maybe, maybe not. Did the IRS call back a bunch of workers? Yeah. Are they supplying them with protection? No. They're pretty much like Walmart. You know, we were little kids and they say, you know, nothing is so sure as death and taxes. You would think an entity like the IRS would have the budget to protect its workers, but that was one of the stories I saw this week. So, you know, as we round the bend on this hour that we've spent together, and I'm going to do my level best to look at my phone and see if I can engage you with a live chat. I'm going to end this portion like regular, and I'm not going to mess with this phone. I think I can see some stuff on this phone. I'm going to try. So love hard, forgive harder, and get as happy as you can, as fast as you can. I'm going to do my level best to look at the comments and interact with you. So here we go. We'll start with, we have a lot more power than we think we do. They may want to put us back to work before it's safe, but when we go back is our choice. I agree with that. Some days I'm optimistic, other days not so much. It's a tricky balance, but things won't get better if we don't believe they will. Again, you guys are making great comments. So right now, somebody also said there is never a time for bipartisan cruelty. Usually it's pretty partisan anyway. So if anybody has a question that you want to ask me specifically, I'm disabled, so I have a lot of time for reflection. I'm sorry to hear that. And actually, I talked last week about what's referred to as crib time, where a lot of people that are disabled or have huge health issues are basically telling the rest of the world, welcome to my world and my schedule. So, okay, Monique, laugh mode. All right. It's funny you guys should say that. I think of very funny things, and I think of funny like pandemic jokes, but I'm not thinking of one right this second. I apologize, but I do think that being trapped with people, like again, I'm in a different mode than when I'm on stage at a comedy club. Sometimes I'll go back and watch my act and blush at some of the things I've said, but I've have a couple of friends that are in not great relationships, and this situation has very much shined a spotlight. So one of the things I'm going to say that's a little bit racy is that one of my friends was telling me that she hasn't had sex with her husband during the pandemic, but that she, out of just like because she could, not in a spiteful way, but like, you can't stop me. She spent some time alone in the bathroom thinking of the neighbor. And she basically said that when this is over, because the whole thing started with a text like, "Are you okay? We're okay." And she said that she has started looking at the neighbor in a whole new way based on the fact that, that's all they got is the neighbor. And she always kind of liked him anyway. So those are all real comments. You just made my night, Monique. Well, thank you. I'm glad for that. And wish Jose a happy birthday. Oh, I didn't realize, is it Jose? If it's Jose Ortiz's birthday, he's a mega fan. So, and friend. So happy birthday. It didn't pop up on my Facebook, but happy birthday. And Walter, what is my favorite color? Walter, that's a very good question. My favorite color for decor is red. I love red. I have a lot of red in my home. And my favorite color to have personally on me is either black or cobalt blue. And I love red lipstick. It is Jose Ortiz's birthday. Thank you for letting me know that. It's funny how, does she live next door to me? That's my friend Mark Pitta asked me if my friend, my girlfriend, whose name I shall not repeat, who self-pollinated, I guess that's a nice way of putting it in front of you guys. No, Mark, she does not live next door to you, but you are a handsome and lovely man. And I'm sure many women on lockdown have, thought of you in that way, if that makes you feel good. And other people are wishing Jose a happy birthday. So let me see if there's anything else I can get to, and I'll get better at this. Thank you for your kindness. When you do your road trip, I hope you make it to the Midwest. Derek, you can count on me making it to the Midwest. I love the Midwest. My happiest memories as a road comic are on what I call the happy triangle that starts up in Chicago. You go down the 65 to Louisville. If you go this way, you're in Cincinnati. If you go a little bit down, you're in Lexington. If you cut back across, that whole part of the world, Indianapolis, I did radio there for 2 years. I love Indianapolis. A lot of people need to be scared. It might wake them up. Well, I don't want anybody to be frightened, but I do think the pandemic is waking a lot of people up. I thought I was pretty awake at the wheel. Guess what? I found out on one of my credit cards what the interest rate was. I wasn't paying attention. I just pay it. Ridiculous. I've probably paid for the same blowout 8 times. I'll be paying cash to get my hair. When I get my hair done in the future, it's grown about 4. It seems like it's like the pandemic is making my hair grow faster. Let me see if there's anything else that I can address other than I'm so grateful. What is my quest? What is my quest? What a great question. I can tell you that. I actually wrote this. Here's what I want. It's funny you should say that. And it's not a planted question. You guys can see it. Here it is, right there. And I wrote it this morning. And this is how I really write. This is what my book really looks like. So you guys can take a screenshot and read it. Here's what I want: to emerge from this now panic-inducing pandemic as a powerful force for forward motion, wise voice of calm, passion, progress, and faith, champion of communication, influencer of the young and young at heart, seekers, meaning people that are looking for good things, creator of fabulous entertainment content that is anointed, endorsed, sponsored generously, and remunerated and supported to build infrastructure for imagination and ideas for a better world. I actually wrote that this morning because I felt like, what do I want on the other side of this pandemic? So I'm going to show it to you, and you can see there's no cross-outs or scribbles. I write stream of consciousness. It's kind of how I pray. So I'm going to say it again. Here's what I want: to emerge from this now panic-inducing pandemic as a powerful force for forward motion, wise voice of calm, passion, progress, and faith, champion of communication. I think people need to be more linear communicators. People need to speak their truth and not be afraid of the consequences, and surround themselves with people that can hear their truth. Champion of communication, influencer of the young and the young at heart. I'm not a fan of hookup culture. I'm kind of glad that this has hit the pause button on hookup culture. People are doing old-fashioned video courting and sparking, as they would have said on the Beverly Hillbillies. A little vanilla extract behind the ear. Creator of fabulous entertainment content that is anointed, endorsed, sponsored generously, remunerated to build infrastructure for imagination and ideas for a better world, seen and unseen. And then I always end every passage in my journal with TWBD, thy will be done. So I think that's the end of the show and the Q&A. I hope you guys liked what I had to say. And thank you. Evie said, good quest. Thank you, Evie. I think it's a good quest too. It's been wonderful being able to interact with you guys afterwards. And oh, your hair's growing. Oh, the pandemic is making my hair grow so fast it's falling out. I'm sorry about that. Nobody wants to lose hair. Probably a little bit of stress. When my father was ill, I lost a lot of hair when my father was ill before he died. If any of you are losing hair, it'll come back, I promise. All right. It's been wonderful. Good night. Bless you. See you next Saturday night. It's been really fun, guys. Thank you for the opportunity.